Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you for tuning in to Cedar Radio, your guide to films playing at the Art House for the week of March 22nd to March 28th. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Dave Huffman. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing Sebastian Lelio's Gloria Bell and Milorad Krstic's Ruben Brandt Collector.
We'll also be discussing how to properly shoot a trippy LSD scene in a film, the film portion of the South by Southwest Festival, and our Cedar 3 picks for American remakes of foreign language films. Well, we always like to start off the show with the last scene first. So, Dave, what's the last film you've seen?
The last film I saw, Aaron, is Climax. Yes, I went to see it last night, and I'm so glad I got to see that in the theater, and I'm not quite sure why so few people wanted to see it this week at the theater. We only are keeping that film 1 week, both here at the Cedar Lee and at the Capitol.
Already done by the time
by the time people are listening to this that morning. If you're listening to this Thursday morning it just comes out, you've got 1 day, you got a few shows left to see it, and I'd highly recommend if you can to go see it, because it is it might not be a movie for everybody, but I think it is a film that absolutely, if you are going to enjoy it, you're going to need the experience of seeing it on the big screen.
Yeah, good sound system, everything.
It's an immersive sort of sensory experience, and I was very impressed with it from a technical standpoint. It's not the most successful movie overall, but I really did enjoy it, and I think what I liked about it was so often movies about people on a drug trip, they kind of go into these cliches of like point of view shots where you see like their hallucinations, or you see, very stereotypical use of colors bleeding into other things and stuff like that. It just
the traces
seems like
across the screen, and
just the very cliche kind of thing. I love the fact that he didn't do any of that.
Right.
Everything is you're just seeing these people in the world that they're, and you're seeing them kind of going through it, but you're not seeing anything from their perspective.
Right, it's not trying to put their point of view on the audience at all. Yeah,
and I thought it was a great way to convey it, and I loved the camera work in that movie is amazing, and the way he chose to shoot the dance scenes. Like one of them is completely just Busby Berkeley style overhead. Yeah, not that it's like choreographed like a Busby Berkeley show, sequence, but I thought it was really visually very cool.
That was one thing as I was editing last week's show, I was thinking we didn't really mention, and it really hadn't clicked for me until watching Climax, that opening dance scene where it's like all one take, that he has done the trippy stuff before, and Enter the Void is very hallucinatory, whatever. And then Irreversible is just an all-out assault on your morals and your sensibilities and everything, which I do love that he's so confrontational about it. But it didn't click for me until watching Climax, where like he is one of those directors that loves the long take and try to choreograph the whole thing, which I remember thinking at least cursory with Irreversible or Enter the Void, but they're so extreme in their content and what they're trying to do that the cinematography kind of gets overlooked, but he's got a great eye for cinematography.
The complexity of some of these shots in this movie, and I don't even know how long. There's one shot in this film that has to be at least 15 minutes, maybe. I don't even know, because you kind of, just like the characters in the film, you lose track of time.
Right.
And it's once the trip kind of kicks in and people are descending into their kind of, LSD madness, you don't really know exactly what's going on all the time either. And you're kind of going from this vignette where these people are and someone's walking down the hall going into passing other people, and it just goes on and on and on. There's this one shot it's one of those things that you don't even realize that is a single shot.
That's what I was going to say.
Like at a certain point you go,
wait, there hasn't been
a cut, or if there's a cut in here somewhere, they did such a great job of masking it, rope style from Hitchcock's Rope, where someone just walks in front and that's where the cut is, to hide it. It's I thought it was really very impressive.
There's an example. I was talking to a couple of regulars last night who saw it, and that Rope was actually the exact example I had, where but I was saying Rope has a couple of those awkward ones where it zooms in on like Jimmy Stewart's jacket and then zooms out. Like, I think they did an edit right there.
Very subtle.
But that's why I think maybe that's why it hadn't clicked for me before, because he's not doing I'm trying to think of a comparison real quick. Like Birdman, as much as I love that movie, the, I guess, quote unquote gimmick of that is that it's all one take, even though it's not. There's some time lapse and it kind of hides it there. But to me, that was kind of showing the audience, oh, look, it is all one take, where this was just so seamless. You're like, wait, is that all one? Or like Atonement. There's like that big 13 minutes, one long take in Atonement that I didn't register that as one long take because I was into the story, and it feels very organic to that part of the story that it is all done in one shot. That it doesn't call attention to itself, I guess.
And what was the last film you saw, Aaron?
I caught Triple Frontier, the new J.C. Chandor film.
I saw that as well.
That movie, He's a director that I think because I went to film school where they really taught the auteur theory and pushed that a lot. I want to, when a new director pops up and I'm following their career, I want to be like, what's their thing? What are some of their themes there? And he has those in his movies. We've shown Margin Call, All Is Lost, and A Most Violent Year, his three previous writing and directing films. This one I had pretty good hopes for because I was like, oh, the cast is amazing. Oscar Isaac and Pedro Pascal and what's the other guy? Ben Affleck and whatnot, Charlie Hunnam, Garrett Hedlund and everybody. It was a very interesting cast. I was like, oh, I'm looking forward to this. And I was kind of wrestling with it, and I really wanted to like it, but it's kind of terrible, I thought.
I didn't think it was terrible. I thought it was just
I think it's a missed opportunity thing where I was like, great director, great screenwriter, great cast. And I was like, man, I really wanted something more interesting.
It seemed a little by the book in a lot of ways.
Very much so,
And when we talk about like drug cartel movies last week.
It lined up perfectly,
So it was, I was kind of, I was watching it, I was thinking of that, but it just to me was just okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a movie that totally did seem like a made for Netflix kind of home video sort of experience. I was thinking if this had played theatrically, I think it would have been a big bomb. I just don't think either critically or
because expectations would have been bigger too.
Yeah, I just don't think people would have I just don't think it would have worked theatrically. So I think it's this one's probably good that it did just end up on Netflix.
Because the trailer, let's pretend it's going to be a theater movie. The trailer plays up like the action, which there's some action, but it's a lot of them just sort of like walking through the hills with bags of money on mules. And it's like, it's the story also just had, I don't know, like one last heist and then it goes wrong. Oh, what a surprise. And like there was a couple moments where I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to go in the story. And the first like 30, 40 minutes were so tight with like the first, raid on the house and stealing the money. I was like, all right, I'm on board. And then there's a certain point where just kind of, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who wants to watch it, but like there's a certain point in halfway through where it kind of just took a turn where I was like, I don't know if this is the way to go with this story. And then I just wasn't on board for the rest of it.
It was just to me, okay. That's what I would say. I wouldn't say terrible, but I would just say okay.
It was just because of expectations to me. Like I was expecting more. If this was a first-time filmmaker, I would have been like, oh, it's maybe more interesting or maybe like a 2.5-star movie. But I was like, man, what a wasted opportunity on this one.
I did enjoy Ben Affleck as a sort of, the jerk, the sort of bad guy.
Yeah,
of
he
the
played
group.
that fine.
I thought he was very good. And but the other ones, I don't think anyone else really stood out. Even Oscar Isaac, who's usually great. Felt like he was meh.
And there's no real good sense of character background. I mean, they set them all up as like ex-special ops guys, but then... And then they didn't really do much with that. I did look up as I was reading a few reviews. It was originally going to be because Mark Bull is a frequent collaborator with Catherine Bigelow as a screenwriter, wrote this a while ago. It was originally set to star Tom Hanks and Johnny Depp like 6 years ago. I can't.
That would have been a very
I can't
different
picture
film.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
That would have been amazing.
So
I want to
weird.
see that movie.
I kind of do, just out of curiosity now.
Let's crowdfund that and see if they'll remake it already.
How much money do we have to crowdfund to get Tom Hanks and Johnny Depp to be in a
We're going to talk
together?
later about remakes of foreign films into American films. We can talk about real fast remakes of one American movie into another American movie with the original cast.
At the Art House this week, we had Birds of Passage and The Wedding Guest both opened. But I also wanted to mention Apollo 11. There's a rare thing you get with movies in the theater where usually like the first weekend everybody's out because it's a brand new movie, everybody's interested, and then the second weekend it kind of trickles off a little bit. But Apollo 11 is holding. Usually we base it on like our Saturday crowd because that's the day everybody goes to the movies. And like the numbers are almost the exact same the second weekend out. And the word of mouth, everybody just comes out just swooning like, oh my God, like either they were alive at the time and they're like, it's so perfectly recreated that time. Well, it's not recreation, it's all archival footage. So like it does trigger those memories, but it's also a lot of families bringing, their kids out to see it too, which obviously they weren't around then, but there's such a wow factor to this movie on the big screen.
Have we had any flat earther or conspiracy theorist people come to the show?
I have prompted a couple of those conversations with regulars that I know I can prompt that with, where it's like, yeah, but like it's all this great footage that, when they faked the moon landing, we never saw that footage, so it's great they included it now, but not without any sort of prompting there.
I just was hoping maybe we had one person that stood up at a screening and went, "It's all alive!"
Right now.
Dramatically.
You were mentioning to me off mic the Netflix Flat Earth documentary. You tried watching.
I tried to watch it, but it was so infuriating. I only made it through. It was called Behind the Curve.
I was trying to think of the phrase. I knew the phrase was like.
And I only watched about 15 minutes of it because I was getting so angry as I was watching it. I just couldn't even I have a problem with people that can't. That decide to
ignore reality,
ignore facts,
right?
And scientific evidence and things like that. That just want to go with their little
This is what I feel.
This is what I feel,
Yeah.
and this is what I believe.
Right.
It's like, well, if you believe that the Earth is surrounded by a giant wall of ice, a la Game of Thrones, then I can't help you.
Being married to a math teacher, like that is always like a topic of conversation. Was like, you can't feel your way through this, algebra 2 thing.
Right.
Like, this isn't a humanities class.
There is a right
There's
answer.
a right and a wrong answer here. It's pretty black and white. Some of the art house news, I always like to check in with film festivals as
Yes.
they occur throughout the year and wrap up. And South by Southwest wrapped up this past weekend. So I was looking at like the award winners and, what's going to be on the independent film and the art house film circuit coming up. And this festival is a weird one to kind of look at from a distance because obviously you were in Austin before the festival. Right. But this is a weird one to look at because it's almost from a film perspective because they obviously do like interactive and music and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
The film perspective is it looks like two festivals going on here. Because you've got like the Pet Sematary and Us premiered there this year, but then you also had a bunch of these great indie movies, and it's also kind of the start of the mumblecore movement, decades ago, or decade or so ago now, that kicked off at South by Southwest. So like, it's really weird to see the reporting because if, we're not going to necessarily talk here about like Pet Sematary or Us because it's not really the movies that we're generally going to be showing, but then to sort of preview some of the indie stuff that looked good, it's a lot of first-time directors, and it's hard to hype up a movie that there's no trailer for, that there's no real like track record there. So like, how do you hype up movies that people aren't really going to know about until they get some press and a trailer and they start getting booked at art house theaters?
And that's, when we talk about, that's what South by Southwest has become. It's sort of a launching point for the studios to use for some of their kind of upcoming buzzy sort of films, which is what they did with things like Us and Pet Sematary.
Or like last year, Ready Player One, made a big splash there, premiering.
But then when you talk about, there's, like Olivia Wilde, her directorial debut, it's called Booksmart, right? Is that
Yes,
Booksmart?
it is.
And actually yesterday, the studios, before the trailers are made like public, like on YouTube and everywhere else, and before they sometimes will send me the links to the trailers. So I actually got to watch the trailer for that. I don't think it's out.
It's public now.
Yet.
Yeah, I saw it on YouTube. Yep.
So that trailer, like as soon as I'm like, this looks hilarious.
Plays great. Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm like, this seems like a tremendously funny movie.
Yeah.
So now I couldn't be more excited to see that movie after watching that trailer. And I was excited about just reading the descriptions from some of the write-ups of it, but it was just really hilarious. And I'm also some of the other things I was reading about. We were talking about mumblecore. Lynn Shelton's
her new
film
one
is coming up from
Sword of Trust. Yeah,
where I was looking at her IMDb page because I couldn't really think of what else she'd been doing. Again, a lot of TV stuff
and a lot of stuff we've played here, like Hump Day and Laggies, Your Sister's Sister.
Yeah. We played a lot of her films, but then just a ton of awesome TV work.
Yeah,
and she directed Mark Maron's in this film, and she had directed like the Mark Maron
his show or
like his. Like a TV special or one of his like concert things.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it's like that's how she connected with Mark Maron, and now she puts him in his movie. So I like when people like creatively,
you can sort of see their circle.
Their little circle of talent there, and I'm looking forward to that one. It sounds like it's pretty good.
Should say the Olivia Wilde film Booksmart is two girls who are top of their class, great students, and then it's one of those all in one day kind of. Right before they graduate, they decide they got to work in all of the partying and craziness of high school they didn't, participate in for 4 years, and then, put it all into one night. And speaking of drug trips, as you were talking about with Climax a few moments ago, from what I've read, they, I don't know if they're on drugs or not, but the way that Olivia Wilde did in this movie is there's a brief animated sequence to show their crazy drug trips. Like everything about that one just sounds really fantastic.
And it's an interesting, it's sort of like a female super bad,
right?
If you will.
That's the packaging for it, at least. Yeah.
And but one of the young women is a lesbian, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that we've got kind of a sexual diversity, and from a female perspective, I think it's going to be just an awesome movie. I can't wait to see it.
It's also worth noting too, Janet Pearson was doing the programming at South by Southwest the last couple of years, and a lot of the headlines going into the festival were 60% of the films in competition were female directed and centered films, which is a great way to get some headlines, but also a great way to make some huge strides towards appropriate representation when you're programming a festival or just Hollywood in general. So we'll be right back with the two new films we're opening this week here at the theater. Coming up this week, we have the continuing Fathom Events and Turner Classic Movies series. Universal Pictures this time also presents To Kill a Mockingbird. It is playing Sunday, March 24th at 1 p.m. with a second show on Wednesday, March 27th at 7 p.m. The first new film we have this week is Gloria Bell from director Sebastian Lelio. This is actually inspired our Cedar 3 list coming up shortly here in the show. This is an English language remake of his film Gloria, which we played here. That was, 2013, I
think so.
About a free-spirited woman in her 50s, this time played by Julianne Moore, seeking out love in the LA dance club scene. Love is in the
air. You come here a lot?
Yes. No, not a lot. I mean, sometimes.
What's your name?
Gloria.
And I don't know if I'm being foolish.
Hello. Are you asking me out?
Dave, this is one you have seen,
yes,
the new version.
I have. I never
I've
saw
seen the original
Gloria.
one,
well,
so
there
we
you
can
go.
compare notes, I guess.
Yeah, I never saw Gloria. I missed it whenever we had it, and it's just one of those films I've just never got caught up on.
Mm-hmm.
And and honestly, when I went to the trade screening of this, I sort of forgot that it was a remake of that. And then as I was sitting there watching them, I'm like, I feel like we played this movie.
Something's familiar
about this. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's what that was. But it's very good. It's getting great reviews. The last time I checked it, I think it still might be at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it is, Julianne Moore does a great job. She's kind of perfectly cast in the film. And what I liked about it was that it doesn't go in your traditional movie romantic comedy kind of Stella got a groove back sort of way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of a much
the meet
more
cute. How will they get together? And then yay, everybody's.
It's not like that.
Not the formula.
So I like that. You know, that it's a little bit more realistic.
Yeah.
And it just played like how a person in this situation would be. Finding herself at these clubs and meeting a man or men and things like that. And some of them have a little prospect, some of them don't, and sometimes you're looking for just a one night and sometimes you're looking for a little bit more. And I thought was kind of interesting about it is that it has a really kind of a cameo by Sean Astin. He has a little role like when she finds herself in Vegas, and I like the fact that when he was cast in that, it like sets up your expectations for something else. So because sometimes when it's a known face, you think, oh, all right, and then,
like they're gonna be around for the rest of the story.
So and that's I don't know that that's a spoiler alert, but
no, he's in the movie. He's in the cast on
but
IMDb,
I'm just saying, like as I was watching it, as soon as I saw him on screen, my mind started to come
main
up
character,
with
you feel,
it kind of made it. I was like, oh, this is how this is going to go, and then
subverts those.
It isn't always as predictable as you think it's going to be. So I appreciated that quite a bit about the film.
That was obviously not the case with his original because I was unfamiliar with all of the faces and actors in that one. So as it popped up, like you kind of just went along with the story. And I'm curious to see this one to know if it's one of those. I'm trying to think of an example, like Michael Haneke's Funny Games. Like it's almost literally shot for shot remake. I don't imagine it would be here because you're talking about a completely different scene. One was set in Chile, and one is set here in America. So like obviously different scenery, different scene in general. Different settings and all that, so it'd be kind of weird to do a shot for shot one.
Yeah, I don't want to ask you too many plot points in case I don't want to give away the whole story.
Well, you can ask me once we're done recording.
Off mic, but not on mic.
Sebastian Lelio actually too. He is coming off a Best Foreign Film win for A Fantastic Woman.
Great movie.
And I was looking on his IMDb page because I was like, they'll do like a one win or like the awards section there, and it didn't list anything for him. So like when you win Best Foreign Language Film, it's not necessarily the director getting that award?
I'm confused about that as well. It's something that we had talked about before, and I've meant to look this up.
Me too.
The director is always the one that goes up and accepts the award, and I was always under the impression that is the person that won the award, that it was like the director won that award.
IMDb profile sort of thing. Yeah. So if you go to the film A Fantastic Woman, it says one win Best Foreign Language Film.
Right. But who actually is holding on to that Oscar?
Right.
Is it going to some just random, person in the country of origin that won?
Right, yeah. Just the producer, like the Best Picture does?
Maybe they all get to share it.
Yeah.
Every person.
They all get one little mini Oscar that makes one big Oscar?
Yeah, it's like the Stanley Cup. You just get to keep it.
Everybody holds it together.
Move it along. Mm-hmm.
He's a very interesting director as well because I was thinking this was his first English language film, but because I just got hung up on the whole remake.
Yeah.
But he did Disobedience. Like he's just churning out
which was
films.
a great movie.
It was, but we just played it a few months ago, really. So he's chugging right along. He's also part of this. I'm fascinated. Anybody else that's interested in kind of world cinema, if you've seen Fantastic Woman or Gloria, he's part of like these Chilean filmmakers right now that are getting pretty good representation on the art house circuit, along with like Sebastian Silva, who did The Maid and Crystal Fairy, and my personal favorite, Pablo Larraín, who did Tony Manero. He did No with Gael Garcia Bernal, we showed here. The Club, which is my favorite of his.
I've not seen that one.
He did Jackie most recently with Natalie Portman. Right. So it's almost like they're kind of going back and forth too, between coming and doing some English language stuff, then going back to Chile and doing some directing as well.
Is Chile going to be the new Mexico?
I don't know. It might be. Start there in invasion of the foreign language film, and or no, not even really in foreign language. The Mexican directors are winning all the Best Picture, Best Director Oscars. So hopefully there.
And we're also opening a new animated film called Ruben Brandt Collector by Milorad Krstic. This is a film about a psychotherapist who is suffering from nightmares, and they're all inspired by works of art. And coincidentally, some of his patients are thieves, so he has them steal these works of art, and he becomes known as the Collector.
My nightmares are getting stronger and stronger. Characters from famous paintings continue to attack me. Your compulsion to steal comes from a deeper need. You are missing something in your life. I want you to paint it.
How can I paint it if I don't know what it is?
Trust in the brush. I need all 13 paintings that are tormenting me.
Possess your problems to conquer them.
Exactly.
You look like a man who wants something.
Van Gogh's postman.
We are dealing with a collector here, and not a serial thief.
We are raising the reward
to $20 million.
Ruben, you said that everything started after your father's funeral.
I don't want to talk about that. Art is the key to the troubles of the mind.
I find it interesting that there's a psychotherapist who has 4 professional thieves that just happen to be his clients. So I'm curious to see how they work that into the plot.
I'm sure that...
Or it's like a work release thing, or they have to see a therapist.
I'm sure many therapists have, criminals of a variety.
Now
of
you say
nature.
that makes that's a good fair point.
Yeah.
Those are probably mentalities that need some help.
Need some help.
Yeah.
But this is, it is animated, but it's, again, a lot of people think animated means for kids. This is not a kids animated film. This is an adult movie.
And it's rated R.
Yeah, it's rated R. This is not...
Yeah.
This is not in other countries other than America.
Right.
There are films that are, definitely animated films are not just for children.
And we've had a lot of hits over the years of ones. For some reason, I was back to Triplets of Belleville, but
well, that's because it was
Loving Vincent very recently, all oil painted animation. I mean, it does really connect with adult audiences if it's the right story. And this one having kind of an art centric idea. There's a very thriving, world famous at this point, art scene in Cleveland with the Cleveland Museum of Art.
Absolutely.
And other local galleries as well. This one, some of the reviews for it, the one that piqued my interest the most was this film that says is especially good at providing a noir atmosphere, which means jazzy, smoke-filled dives, ominous shadows. It was like references to Mike Hammer films. It was like, I'm in right there. That sounded great. And all the reviews I've read so far really point to like, it's such a skillful use of like action and adventure and international intrigue. And I was not, just reading the description, I was not expecting like an action, spy kind of heist thriller of an animated film, but that's what we're getting here with this one.
So hopefully people will come and check it out.
And we'll be right back with our Cedarly 3 picks for this week.
And this week we also have another special event with Fathom Events presenting Diana Ross, Her Life, Love, and Legacy. So it is a gay holy day of obligation on Tuesday, March 26th at 7 p.m. when we're going to be showing a classic concert. This is her 1983 Central Park concert where she played to over 1 million people over a period of 2 days.
So each week we like to take inspiration from one of the new films opening and suggest 3 films to broaden your cinematic horizons. And this week with Gloria Bell coming out, I was thinking it's kind of that rare instance of someone... Well, it's a rare instance that the same director remakes their film, foreign language film in English then afterwards. But it's not necessarily that uncommon to take a foreign film and remake it in America. So what was your criteria on this? Did you have anything like you had to have seen both versions?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yeah, I went through and there was so many movies that as I was doing research for this, there was things that I didn't realize were remakes. Like,
same here. Yeah,
I did not realize that The Postman Always Rings Twice was a remake of a French film.
Italian one too. Assassione.
Oh, that's So I might be. There was just a lot of
there's a
film
few of
noir
those,
like things that I'm like I didn't realize that was and now I want to
seek
those out. Some Like It Hot
yeah.
has like a French and a German remake.
Yeah.
Before it became the American classic. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Although I did remember that Some Like It Hot was originally a French film.
Yeah, a couple of them jogged my memory, and I was like, oh, that's right. There's that one too.
I did not know that it had been remade in Germany though,
right.
before.
Right.
So I'm like, I want to see both of those versions just to
absolutely.
see it. And I was on YouTube, and there are some clips of the German one, which is like Fanfare der Liebe. Yeah,
good
something like that.
All right. Yeah.
No, that's not good.
Well, it sounded good to me.
Right.
I don't know what you're saying, but
it sounds.
It sounded German.
Yeah, Fanfare der Liebe. But it is. That was from like 1951, and you can see some clips of that online, and I'm just intrigued. I gotta try to track that down. The first one on my list kind of sticks to that. This is a film that was originally a German film from 1933. Actually, there's two German versions of it. One from the 30s, one from the 50s.
I knew it was a German version, but I didn't know there were two.
I didn't realize that either because I'd only ever seen the one from the 30s, but apparently there's one from the 50s as well. And it's Victor Victoria, which was remade here in the States in 1982 by Blake Edwards, starring his wife Julie Andrews and James Garner. And it's just one of the best kind of, movie musicals of the 80s, certainly, since there weren't a whole lot
there wasn't
of them.
It wasn't a thriving genre at the time.
After the early 80s, they all just kind of died because there were so many terrible ones, thanks to Xanadu and things like that, just killed it.
Paint your wagon.
But I love Victor Victoria. It's just an amazing film. And I have seen the original 30s version one back in, I think, my German cinema class in college, but it was not that memorable. But,
right.
I definitely prefer the remake to the original in that case.
That's actually kind of one of the keys I had. So I went with the things that I had seen, the original and the new version, and all of the ones that I picked. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That is not true in my second one. I was going to say they were all kind of, for the most part, two of them are, I think, improvements on the original one. So the first one I wanted to mention is from 2002. It's Insomnia, a Christopher Nolan film that doesn't really get as much attention. It's one of the only movies he's done that he didn't also write as well. I think actually he technically did a pass on the script before they shot, but he doesn't have like the Writers Guild credit on the movie as that. It was his follow-up to Memento, which was one of those. I came out of Sundance, huge buzz. I got to see it at the Cleveland International Film Festival that year. Same year I saw Maurice Peros, which was an amazing year down there at the festival.
Can't watch that movie.
For breakout ones. I know you can. So seeing Memento, I was like, what is this guy going to do next? And I'd seen the original Insomnia actually at the Cinematech. But yeah, so Christopher Nolan did this adaptation or remake, and it was like, oh, it's weird because he had done Following as his first feature, then he did Memento, and I was like, oh, he's doing a remake. That's interesting. But it was one of those two where at that time period, Robin Williams, it's the same year he did 1 Hour Photo. So it's Al Pacino and Robin Williams doing this great cat and mouse
I love creepy
film.
Robin Williams.
It's so good.
Notice I almost
good.
said Robbie Williams because
you got it on your brain.
I've got Robbie Williams on the brain.
But it's also set so high up in the wilderness of Alaska where it's just constantly daylight, and how that messes with your perception of reality. And Al Pacino's this grizzled, famous detective who comes in to consult on a case, and he can't sleep, and how that messes with your senses and your instincts. And then you have a cat and mouse kidnapper killer, on the loose there too. Hilary Swank plays the local law enforcement trying to catch this guy, but. It's a great remake, and one that I think most people that are Christopher Nolan fans, I'm not sure people really, they're forgetting that one little lone movie back there right after Memento.
It is one of those ones that people don't mention much in his filmography.
Right.
Like it has almost been sort of like skipped over and forgotten whenever people talk about him.
I'm a victim of that too, because as I was looking up for the list for this particular episode, I was like, oh, I
forgot all about Insomnia.
Yeah.
No, it's a great movie. So I would agree that I think that is an improvement over the original. I've seen both of those as well.
The original's fine. I like it, but the little touches that Nolan adds to, I think, really help out.
And Pacino isn't like crazy Pacino.
It's not hoo-ah Pacino.
Yeah,
it's subdued,
it's
slowly degrading.
Yeah, it's a very good performance by him instead of.
So it is possible to tell him on set, tone it down a little.
Yeah, keep an eye. And Hilary Swank.
She's always good.
She's always pretty much always good. Yeah. And then the next film on my list is We Are What We Are. I don't know if a lot of people saw this film.
I don't think so.
Or I know a lot of people, no one really saw the American version. It was not very successful. But the original, even probably less people saw, which is a Mexican film from 2013. 2010, the original one was from, and that's Jorge Michel Grau's film about a family of cannibals in Mexico City. And what they do when the father dies, like the father was the one who brought home, the food.
The food, yeah.
And it's just this really chilling, great movie about survival. And it is not if I tell you it's a movie about a family of cannibals living in Mexico City, it's not the movie that you picture.
Okay.
You know, and it is just a great film, and it's really an amazing movie. And then the American remake from just a few years later, 2013, by Jim Mickle, who did Stakeland and a couple other little indie horror films. Completely different. Like it's again, the basic premise is like a family of cannibals, but this one's about really a father and his two daughters.
Yeah.
And it's just a completely different take on it. So it's like, it has a basic kind of kernel of the same elements, but it's in no way, and has the same title, but they're radically different movies. Like you would they're almost like cousins as opposed to a remake.
Right.
And
source of inspiration, but then so
I appreciated that, but like having loved the original so much, I was a little disappointed by this one.
Okay.
But I've wanted to revisit it and just kind of explore it on its own
now
terms.
that you know what it is.
Yeah, because like your expectations are when you've seen the original of something and you see the remake, you have expectations.
Absolutely.
And if someone completely changes something around, you go, oh, that's not right. Why would you do
that?
Right,
you're expecting just the straight remake of
but
it.
But sometimes you have to do that. You know, it's not like Let the Right One In, where the adaptation is pretty faithful to the original, the Swedish original. This one is a completely different film, aside from basic sort of minor plot points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect transition.
Yes.
Because in 1960, there's a fantastic Ingmar Bergman film called The Virgin Spring. And in
I almost put this on my list.
In 1972, a young filmmaker was working on his directorial debut.
A scrappy young filmmaker.
A scrappy young filmmaker was working on his feature film debut in 1972 by the name of Wes Craven.
Oh,
and he
Cleveland's
adapted
own.
Ingmar Bergman's The Virgin Spring into Last House on the Left.
Yes.
Which was my introduction to that 70s genre when it kind of shifted away from the traditional kind of like studio horror stuff of the era. So when it shifted away from kind of like the way the studio was going, and then you had the 60s and 70s with like the drive-in and the grindhouse sort of stuff. And this broke through to the mainstream in a way that it really probably, he was thinking it was just going to stay in that grindhouse kind of B-movie drive-in kind of situation. But it, announced Wes Craven to the world. And it's radically different than The Virgin Spring, but the kernel, like you said, with We Are What We Are, is still there of the kind of like family revenge element to it, but obviously way amped up. It's one of those two. It has the classic poster to it where it's like how not to faint when you watch this movie. You're going to be so shocked. And I love the posters of that era when they're just telling you going into it like how just full of debauchery and like you see it at your own risk and all the warnings on the poster.
That same film was remade again in the probably like the early 2000s, maybe. I think it's called Chaos. It's another adaptation of Virgin Spring and Last House on the Left, and that one's even more extreme. Like like they were like, hey, we're gonna be even crazier. It's really brutal. Well, the last film on my list is the classic Akira Kurosawa film Yojimbo, which was from 1961, remade by Sergio Leone as A Fistful of Dollars, starring Clint Eastwood. And I love whenever it's not the only Kurosawa film that was adapted.
Not even Yojimbo itself. That's a bunch of remakes
Yojimbo's been remade a bunch terribly by Walter Hill as The Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis. But the good remake is A Fistful of Dollars, which is iconic. I like whenever you can have two films. I'm not going to quite say that Fistful of Dollars is a masterpiece, but it is certainly iconic and a great, beautiful, brilliant movie.
Yeah.
Yojimbo is amazing, and I love whenever his films get adapted, just like The Magnificent Seven is another adaptation of a Kurosawa film. So I think that it's interesting to me how they can draw the parallels between sort of the samurai culture and the Wild West culture, and just like let's just trade the swords for the the pistols, and it's just a really interesting way to transfer the story to a completely different culture.
I wonder how many people generally like Western fans, like Fistful of Dollars is a classic of the genre. I wonder how many people realize. I mean, you don't need to realize that it's a remake or know Yojimbo to enjoy that movie. Like you said, it's completely, you just take that one kernel of something and it works just generally as a story. Also, since it's been remade so many different times, like that story clearly works and that it hits something with people.
Right.
Another story that really hit some people because it was kind of a literary phenomenon when it came out. I picked The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So read all of the book. Well, not the new ones. I'm not going over that. I've read the Stieg Larsson
ones. The classic ones.
The classic ones. And they felt to me one of those examples of great kind of, like, they're not, in my opinion, like literature,
right?
Just to be a little,
they're
judgy
like
book snob here, like Pulp Fiction, you might say, kind of story. And the original ones in Swedish, which I should say I've seen in the theatrical release version, and then watched the longer versions that ended up on Netflix and DVD, where it's like the full what was broadcast on Swedish television back then, and they're good. And I actually kind of like Naomi Rapace as Elizabeth Salander a touch more than Rooney Mara in the American remake, but the David Fincher film from 2011, the American remake, is so much better than the other three that came out of Sweden. And I might be just biased because I'm a Fincher fan, but I feel like his touch to like more pulpy material elevates it the way that like The Godfather's elevated from its original, pulpy, crime saga novel from Mario Puzo, that this one just... It's also a balancing act with this story, because having read the book, you can't really cut out subplots in this one because all the subplots come together in that story. So you can't cut out a bunch of stuff from that book and have the story still really work. So you have to figure out a way, which Fincher's really good at, of condensing, what I'm assuming is like, 180-page script or something down to a very fast-moving but very coherent and understandable film. And in prep for this, I didn't rewatch the movie, but I rewatched the trailer, and I'd forgotten it's like a 3-minute, 40-second trailer for this film that they put out instead of the usual like 2.5 minute or so. And it's got all the threads. Like, they even condensed that story into a coherent 3-minute trailer to know, like, this family drama, like the flashback scenes, the current investigation, Elizabeth and her guardian, and that whole subplot. It's all together there in that trailer. And then you have also the amazing score that Trent Reznor put together for that film originally as well. But that one, I saw that several times in the theater. Like, it grabbed me in a way. I was like, that's what I wanted from this adaptation.
And did you see the recent adaptation of Girl in the Spider's Web?
No, because that's part of the non-canon books, in my opinion. Because Stieg Larsson didn't write that one, so I wasn't going for the new version. Although, I was intrigued, and I'll catch it eventually. But I was like, also, I was really hoping for a Fincher trilogy of a full adaptation of that, which we didn't.
I was fascinated since the film was a critical success and a commercial success.
Yeah,
why
didn't keep going,
and why they didn't even usually whenever people sign on to something that is a potential franchise, they're sort of contractually obligated to do it.
Stick around and keep doing that.
So I'm fascinated how they didn't write those contracts to keep Rooney Mara in the role. And, and if not him as director, usually they stick around in some kind of, creative...
Produces them or something,
something. So that was interesting.
On next week's episode, we will be discussing The Mustang, Hotel Mumbai, and The Beach Bum. Next week's Cedarly 3 theme will be Cinematic Provocateurs in honor of Harmony Korine's new film, The Beach Bum. If you have a particular cinematic provocateur you'd like to bring to our attention, submit your picks at Cedarly Theater using the hashtag Cedarly3, the number 3. As always, thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio and lending us your ears this week. All the music heard on the show is original music written by Grant Heineman and performed by the New Heights Jazz Ensemble, used with their permission, of course. Visit clevelandcinemas.com for correct showtimes and to purchase advance tickets. Also, there are links in the show notes. You can use those if you'd like as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Cedarly Theater, spelled with an R-E at the end because we're fancy like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast, and while you're subscribing, leave us a rating and review, or better yet, tell a fellow film geek about the show. We'll see you at the movies.